everyone, welcome to my channel. So today I'm going to be talking about why I didn't like The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This was a very hyped up book. I heard a lot of good things about it, but I was kind of very disappointed in it because I did have very high expectations, which is probably on me because I heard a lot of people talking about it and how good it is. So I thought that I was gonna like it too because the premise sounded very interesting. It's basically this girl who makes a deal with the devil, but the catch is that nobody remembers her. She can't leave a mark on the world. Like, people forget her face, her name. Like, everyone forgets her. So that's basically what happens in the story. But what I didn't really like was, first of all, that it was promoted as a love story between a French girl and a devil, which it's really not that at all. Like, the love story between the two characters, Addie and Luke the devil, or the darkness, doesn't really develop that much until the last like 100 pages of the book. The love story between Luke and Addie didn't develop until the last like 75 to 100 pages of the story. Like, that's when it really started to develop a bit more. But even when they did explore their kind of love story and their dynamic, it was only for like a couple of pages, which was a little disappointing because I was expecting it to be this love story between them that spanned over 300 years. Like, they're gonna get to know each other and there was gonna be all of this happening over 300 years, but it didn't really happen like that. Like, it only happened in little pieces here and there, and even when it did happen, it didn't have much substance to it, I guess. Like, they would have these little conversations here and there, like, and like a little bit of like flirtatious moments, but there wasn't really much to it until the last like 100 pages. So I thought that was a little disappointing. Something that I personally didn't like about the book was the fact that it's very slow paced. Like, the story follows a few different timelines. It follows Addie in like the 1700s to the 1900s, and also in present day in 2013 and 2014. So the timeline jumps from 2014 to like 1792, and then back to like 2014, and back to like the 1800s. So the timeline jumps around a lot, which personally I didn't find the time jumps back in time to be that important because I don't think they really added much to the story. Like, whenever it would go back in time, it would just talk about how Addie was struggling and how she had to steal food, steal clothes, or how she had like a one-night stand and the person forgot her the next day, or how she like was like living through like different like pivotal times in history, like during different wars. But it didn't really add much to the story, so I personally didn't find those time jumps to be that important. I think the story could have been like structured differently, because the time jumps back and forth wasn't really my personal like favorite thing, because I think that if the story was formatted differently, like if it was going over 300 years, I feel like that could have developed the story a little bit more. But since it did jump back and forth in time, I feel like it kind of interrupted the different plots that were happening, because when something would happen in present day in like 2013, then it would jump back to like the 1800s, and sometimes when it did jump back, that storyline wouldn't really match up to what was happening in the present day. So I personally didn't like the time jumps. I know that some people do like that kind of structure in their stories, but I personally didn't like it. My biggest issue with the story is just how repetitive it is, because Addie is living over 300 years and she is meeting all of these people, and then they're all forgetting her as soon as they walk away, or as soon as the door closes, or as soon as like the next day. Like, it's basically, it's very repetitive because she is having all of these experiences and then people are forgetting her, and it just follows that whole like back and forth of her meeting someone, her spending the night with them, and then the next day they forget her, and it just repeats. Like, it's an endless cycle. So I found that to get a little bit boring and very repetitive. Like, whenever she would meet someone and then it would be the next day and they'll be like, oh, I don't remember you, I'll be like, okay, I get it. This has happened like 20 other times in the previous chapters. So I thought that was a little repetitive. And also adding on to like how repetitive everything is. Whenever she would like break something, it would fix itself, or whenever she would like walk in like the grass and then she would look back and the path behind her would be like back to normal. Like, she can't leave any marks on the world. So that was also very repetitive. I found that to like, I didn't need to hear just how forgettable she is over and over and over again, because we get it. We know that Addie is being forgotten by everybody. Like, no one can remember her, but I just didn't need it to be like drilled into my head like every 2 seconds. So I did not like that. Something else, I'm looking at my notes. Something else that was very repetitive was Addie's description of herself. Like, every few pages or whenever she would like meet someone, they would always talk about the 7 freckles on her face that look like stars in the sky. Like, I get it. Like, I know that she has 7 freckles on her face, but I don't need to keep hearing about it. Like, trust me, I know. I heard it like the first like 3 times. So I thought that was also, yeah. Something else is that the characters are all low-key kind of boring. Like, Addie doesn't have much of a personality, which is surprising for someone that has lived over 300 years. You would think that she would develop interests and a personality, but her only personality is the fact that people forget her and that she has 7 freckles on her face. Like, and like, she has like no substance as a character. Like, there's nothing interesting about her, and there's also nothing, like, I don't know what Addie looks like. The only thing that I know about her is the fact that she has 7 freckles on her face. But besides that, I don't know what she looks like. I don't know what she likes. I don't know her interests. And for someone that's lived 300 years, you would think that she will learn different things, like different hobbies and skills, and like develop interests, but I personally didn't think that she did. The only thing that they talked about was the fact that she knows like 6 languages, but besides that, she doesn't really have any like interests or anything. Like, she was just like a very boring character. Addie also didn't develop much as a character for having lived 300 years. Like, she's lived through historical moments in history. She's lived through several wars. She's seen technology develop and change, and she's lived through all of these very important moments in history, but it doesn't feel like she did. Like, she does talk about how she saw like the first like movie in like color or whatever, I guess, but she doesn't feel like she's lived all of these years. Like, I sometimes forgot that she was supposed to be like 300 something years old, because the way that her character is developed, she's not developed as someone who has lived through all of these moments. Like, these moments have happened to her and she has experienced them, but that's pretty much as far as it goes. So I wish that her character was developed a bit more, especially for someone having lived 300 years. Like, I think that she should be a bit more interesting as a character. And Luke is just annoying. I know that a lot of people liked him because he's like the devil, he's like the villain, I guess, but I didn't like him at all. I found him to be very annoying. Every time he would pop into a scene and ask her if she wanted to surrender, I would just be like, I don't want you to be here. Like, I just found him to be very annoying, and just the way that he would talk and the way that he would like treat her was just very annoying, and I didn't like him at all. And also the way that he was described, the black curls, the green eyes, and the wolfish grin. Like every time that he would pop into a scene, Addie would talk about his wolfish grin, and I'm just like, I like there's nothing else that you can use to describe him. Like there's like he's described as having like a wolfish grin, like it feels like 20 times, and I found that also to be very repetitive. And Henry, oh, Henry, he's not the worst character, but he's also not very interesting either. Like none of these characters are very interesting at all. Like Henry, he was relatable because he didn't know what he wanted to do with his life. He like dropped out of college after when he was getting like his PhD. Like there's this whole thing, but he's not very interesting. Like he works at a bookstore. He has two best friends. He hooked up with one of his friends. They were together at one point, but there's really nothing else to him. Like I found all of the characters to be very boring and one-dimensional. Like I wish that all of these characters were developed a bit more and had more of a personality to them other than being forgotten, being the devil, and wanting to be loved, because I feel like the story had so much potential, but the characters just fell flat for me. Also, something that I really wasn't a fan of was this whole love triangle between Addie, Luke, and Henry. I think that if she wanted to go the whole love triangle route, which it seems like she did, I feel like it should have been developed a bit more, because I personally didn't feel like Addie had that much of a connection with Henry or Luke. Like she didn't have a deep romantic connection with either of them, in my opinion. Like the only reason that she liked Henry was the fact that he was the only person that can remember her, and she only likes Luke because of this like dynamic that they've had over the past 300 years. But I feel like for a love triangle, I wish that it was a little bit more developed and Addie had more concrete feelings towards Henry and Luke, because I just feel like the romance of this story wasn't really well developed, especially considering that it's like a whole love triangle. I wasn't rooting for Addie to be with either of them, honestly, because Henry and Luke, neither of them are very interesting. None of them have like a deep connection to Addie, so I just wasn't really interested in the whole love triangle aspect. I wasn't expecting it to be a love triangle either. Like when Henry came into the story and he like remembered her and then it started developing from there, I was not expecting that like whatsoever. Like I feel like her relationship with Luke should have been more developed, and so it could actually be a love story between the two of them instead of being a love triangle between Henry, Luke, and her, because I really wasn't a huge fan of that. Like it wasn't what I was expecting from the story at all. So I was also a little bit disappointed with that, because I was expecting it to be a love story between her and Luke, but it just ended up being a undeveloped love triangle, so I wasn't a huge fan of that. One thing I did like about this story, and probably the only thing I liked, was the writing style. I love V.E. Schwab's writing style. I've read 2 of the 3 books in the Shades of Magic series, and I have another one of her books on my shelf. And I love her writing style. It's so beautiful. Like I just love how she describes things. That's like the one thing that this story has going for itself, is the writing and how beautiful and descriptive it is. But the story itself was just very slow, and it didn't work for me. I think the most interesting part, the most exciting part of the story was the ending. Like that's when I started getting very excited and wanted to see what happened, because it was finally starting to get interesting. But that was pretty much the only exciting part of the story. The rest of it was just, again, very boring. Like I wasn't a fan of this book at all, and I wish that I liked it more than I did. I gave it 3 stars on Goodreads because it was good, but it just wasn't the best. Like, I had very high expectations, which is probably on me for having such high expectations because I just ended up getting very disappointed. But it took me 18 days to read this book, and I should have just DNF'd it because it took me 18 days to finish it. And if I wasn't forcing myself to keep reading it, then it probably would have taken me like even longer than that, because I wanted to finish reading it because I was so excited for this story. The premise was very interesting, but it just fell flat for me. Like, I had no after reading this book, I've I've seen reviews where people were like so emotional, like they were crying, and I just didn't feel anything. Like, I had no connection with these characters. I wasn't that invested in the story at all, and I was just overall disappointed. Like, I had very high expectations for this story, and I am disappointed that I didn't love it because I thought I was going to. Like, it sounded right up my alley, but it just overall fell flat for me. And after looking at reviews, I know that I'm not the only one that felt this way. This book was very hit or miss. People either loved it or they didn't like it at all, and I fall in the category of not really liking it at all. If you do like more slow paced stories, then I think you will like this because it is very slow paced and there are the time jumps back and forth in time. So if you like that kind of story and that kind of structure, you might like this story. But if you were expecting this very interesting love story between a French girl and a devil over 300 years, you're probably going to be disappointed because that's what I thought it was going to be, and sadly it wasn't. So yeah, I just had higher expectations for this book, and I really wish I liked it more than I did. If you also read this story, or if you were interested in reading it, let me know in the comments down below. I would love to talk to other people about this story because I just needed to I needed to let out my emotions because I didn't have anyone to talk to about this. I sent a bunch of voice notes to my boyfriend about it, but he didn't know what I was talking about because he isn't gonna read it. So yeah, I need to talk to other people and see if anyone else feels the same way as me, because I just need to I need to get my feelings out there. But yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next one.